So it's raining, or it was, and it's gonna start again eventually. And I had wrote this earlier, and I've talked about this before, even revolving around the whole Karina Lourdes video where she mentioned this book. And I had even seen it in Barnes and Nobles like a few months ago, which actually made me remember the whole situation. But I'm gonna talk about how I view the let them theory. I should also add that this isn't like an attack at the person who made the book, and I'm not even saying that this is what they meant, but I'm talking about what I think of when I hear let them and when people tell you to let them. It's just like, I'm tired of letting them, and letting them has been my whole life and a lot of people's whole life, and letting them lets you get yourself unalived. So I'm tired of letting them, and that's my point, or going to be the overall point. I really hope I'm going to be hearable. Not really sure if I am. But, as on the side note, this girl had gave me this. If it's visible, no it's not. This. And so now it's on my bed. So, yeah, there's that. And then here's some of my notes, if that's visible. Okay. So hopefully... Oh yeah, I got another hat too. And I'm wearing it on my shirt. I haven't worn this in a while. This is from the Youth Resource Center back in Cali. And it says, "You were the sky and everything else is just the weather." It's kind of faded now though from being washed a lot. And then, what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, and then I got some more shorts. I mentioned in the last video that the other ones were like, I didn't like them in general, but they were way too small. They fit around my waist, but that's pretty much it. These fit enough to where they wouldn't fall down, but I feel like use a shoestring. But they go like to my knees when I'm standing up and then kind of close when I'm sitting down. And so it's more comfortable than like those bullcrap blue shorts I was having to wear. This isn't what I wanted to wear in this video, to be honest, but I guess it's whatever. So, I need to hurry up and start. How many minutes has it been? Okay. So, I remember when Karina Lourdes, or Lord, I don't really know, talked about the Let Them Theory book. To me, it just sounds like fine response and maybe even people pleasing and some grave rocking / stonewalling, which is Dr. Rami has videos about it. I haven't really like watched anything about those things in like a long time. Like I know at 14 I binge watched Dr. Romney and Patrick Teehan and the crappy childhood fairy. I first watched a Daniel Mackler video at 12, and that was like in the start of my Cash for Kids system abuse. So I don't remember that much about it, but it's supposed to be like a tactic to like have your abuse situation go like as not left as possible, but stonewalling / grave rocking isn't safe in every situation. And then also there was something else. What was the other thing with that? I don't even remember, but I'm forgetting something. Anywho, why do I always have to let them? What about letting me? And it reminds me of this dream that I had a couple of times starting like kind of when I first came in the state that I'm in now. I just kept having dreams about nigger please because people are making me mad. But anywho, what about letting me? What in the world? It makes me think of an IG quote I saw at somewhere from 12 to 14 or so that said, once you let an MFer slide, MFer start ice skating. Although, of course, youth and abuse victims in general legally can't defend themselves by design. But it reminds me of this religious, churchy, new agey thing that people, specifically enablers and flying monkey gaslighters and mandated reporters / human cash cow system staff say, which is, you can only control yourself, quote unquote, or even when you're anointed / gifted and so you're targeted and you get in trouble for something others are doing as well, and you're told, quote unquote, I'm not talking about them, focus on you. And that's common in the school system branch of the Cash for Kids system. But that's kind of a side thing, but it reminds me that it's similar enough, because it's another like manipulative tactic. Anywho, this is a common manipulation rhetoric, the whole you can only control yourself. Similar to the domestic violence twin flame doctrine that's been really big the past couple of years, especially since the 2020 thing, when like a lot of people started, like, I guess, binge watching Dr. Romney and doing whatever else. And they were saying, no, people were figuring out like different cluster B titles or whatever, labels, I guess I could say, like narcissist and stuff like that, which is now overused. But when people were like finding out all that stuff, people started saying that like a twin flame is when you're in an abuse situation because they're like you're matched to break you and make you into the person you're supposed to be, and you're supposed to learn a lesson from it. But the twin flame term is more so for dating, maybe even friendships, but really for dating domestic violence, not like the parent stuff, but it's just as blamey. And unfortunately, it's the victims themselves that are like being brainwashed into the whole twin flame doctrine. So the next bullet point thing, point an example. You get locked up in a cash for kids system placement by your abuser. You tried to KMS, or maybe even you did, maybe like you tried to defend yourself. That's probably a better example actually. So maybe I could just say that. You tried to defend yourself after your abuser R-worded / SA'd you. The staff at the Cash for Kids system placement or human cash cow system placement tell you your reaction is your fault and bad, crazy, and retarded, and you need to control yourself, and you need better coping mechanisms. They tell you you can only control yourself, not others, and next time just count to 10 and calm down while being SA'd or beat up or whatever your abuse situation is. That's what they tell you. And that's a good example of how like this let them stuff makes me feel and what it makes me think about. And I know plenty of people that this has happened to, but I mean that's what the Cash for Kids system and human cash cow systems are for. To punish victims or just experiment on people in general. I've said since before the abuse evidence channels that people say stop caring about what other people think or do, and stop caring about what other people think or do to you. That as well. Or even what people say about you. But that's impossible when what the people around you think literally affects you and is life or death, freedom or locked up for the rest of your life. And then the last bullet point, I want to somehow take up my power I don't have and have never had, and stop letting them but let me. Because is it not written in our law that we are gods? There was something else I was going to throw in at the end. But yeah, and I could also put in, especially when it comes to the mandated reporters, which are Cash for Kids system staff. I know, like, as I talk about pretty often, especially like was shown on the abuse evidence channels. Once I went from NC to GA, and GA, like, the Cash for Kids system staff and stuff would at least admit that what was going on was obvious. And I know, like, with the video titled "Your Why Make Videos," which was about a comment that someone left a little while ago talking about some go to an adult and other bull crap that people push and rhetoric of things that don't exist and aren't real or true. Which is just so ironic, just being the whole thing with the abuse evidence channel scenario, and even leading up to me having to run away, which is what made that comment just so angering for 3,000,000,52 reasons. I show some clips of, like, the therapist that I was actually allowed to talk to, so really the first one I ever had, but like after the whole thing where CPS snitched about before CPS snitched about the 1,950 plus abuse evidence videos, my mom was already paranoid about who called, even though it was actually somebody who had seen the evidence channels. and lived in Canada, actually. And also, we had met on some support group as well. But my mom was paranoid about who called at first, so she had told the therapist and other people that worked at the place that they weren't allowed to talk to me. She cursed them out and threatened them. They told me that she was talking about slapping people and all types of stuff. But they should have reported, but of course they didn't. But the point with that is that the more I thought about it, especially since that whole clip thing, or those clips that were in that You're Why I Make Videos video, or the original video, which is unlisted anyways, of like some of that conversation, which really started off with the lady talking about how she was scared that I wanted to sue them. Of course, she didn't like say that word for word, but she was like, "Are you trying to sue somebody?" That was I think that was before I started recording though. But either way, the more I think back on that whole convo, the more I get why nobody that I like had met in support groups and stuff liked her. I even remember one person told me that the only reason that I liked her was because I was comparing bad to worse, and I was actually allowed to talk to her, and she was actually admitting that the situation was what it was, even before I had told her anything, or before she had seen the abuse evidence videos. And part of the reason, I'm actually having a flashback about it as I talk, because I forgot all about this. Part of the reason for that was because she had witnessed a lot of physical, animal, and other abuse situations that just so happened to take off while I was on the phone with her. Not even just with me, but especially with like my siblings and even other people in the house. So that's actually what started that off, but I forgot about that part. But yeah, like and she would always say this, you can only control yourself, and you have to control the situation by having peace in your head. And like this, like she was in a new age and witchcraft type stuff, but plenty of people in the Christianity, Churchianity, Protestant, and even pagan Roman Catholic bullcrap, they spew this same rhetoric that's victim blaming. Makes you feel like, oh, you're just upset about your abuse situation or your bad situation because you're ungrateful, or because you're not being spiritual like you need to be, and you need to have you can only, it was something, I can't even remember it word for word, but pretty much like, you can only control yourself. Stop talking about what other people are doing to you and whoever else, because you can't control that, or you don't need to worry about that. If they're punching you in the face, you can only control yourself. Stop worrying about that. They're strangling you, you can only control yourself. Stop worrying about that. What else was it? You need to create happiness in your head. And it makes me think about this one Bible verse in the New Testament. Can't ever remember the books, but where Paul was in prison and he was writing and he was like, I think myself happy. That's what people tell you to do, but like that's easier said than done in like a lot of not ideal, not safe situations. Like, I mean, maybe now I can like think of myself happy, but like in the midst of constant torture, no. Since escaping and being homeless, yeah, I can to a certain extent, I guess, but I hate the like let them stuff that people spew at abuse victims. And like I said, I'm not like saying that this is what the person who wrote the book intended. I'm just saying what I think about when I hear that, based off of what all the people that give out similar let them theory type comments to people who are in bad situations. Like I've generally, especially since the iatrogenic brain damage, but even just like due to situations I'm in and the MPDs and not being able to feel certain emotions, because honestly it's probably safer to not feel those most of the time. I typically don't really know how I feel. And it's like if someone asks me how I'm doing and I say I don't know, they'll like go on this, especially like since I'm in the South now, they'll go on this like this doo-doo religious rant with all this bull crap that they really don't even believe, because, well, I could go on and rant about that for hours, but it makes me think about this one verse I always mention, or at least I used to always mention to people like that. Based off of what all the people that give out similar let them theory type comments to people who are in bad situations. Like you can't tell your brother to be blessed and not cater to their natural needs. But anywho, they'll be like, why would you say you don't know how you're doing? God woke you up this morning and you need to be grateful. And they'll go on like this rant cursing me out. And it's like, I didn't even say that I was doing bad. Although, I mean, depending on what some people may think, they wouldn't consider my situation doing good. Although I don't really necessarily agree with that. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's better than my life has ever been at any other point in time. Which is how it is for a lot of people, unless they were like straight up like kicked out or they're a dumped out foster kid. And I even saw this like one boy who's kicked out just like sitting on the sidewalk looking sad earlier. And I felt bad, but I mean, of course there's not anything that I could actually do. But like, as I mentioned before, even with that whole situation when I was in Oregon and at the one out of 0.005 youth shelters in the U.S., because there aren't any really because of ageism. There was this one girl who I had met, and she had just got kicked out the day. No, she didn't. She just got kicked out a few days before I met her, and she actually lived in Washington. But like, due to how good the public transportation is, she was able to get on a bus and go from Washington to Oregon to go to the youth shelter and then go back to school. Because also like the school system is like really good, so like even after you graduate, like you can still be in like the sports and stuff, which is really interesting. There needs to be more stuff like that, but I don't want to go somewhere that's kind of irrelevant. But anywho, of course she was really depressed and upset about the whole situation. And I even remember she would be talking about how like she can't live the rest of her life like this and this can't be her life, and she was horrified. And it did make sense to me at the time, but it wasn't even that long ago. I'm saying it like it was like 5 years ago, but day by day, the past couple of days especially, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. But for the typical street kid who's been in abuse situations their whole life and they escaped abuse, which is why they're a street kid, or homeless in general, this is the safest, most peaceful our life has ever been. The first time we were able to get sleep, and we may even eat more out here than we did in our previous abuse situations. And it's just the freedom side. And one of the things about it is that like I'm somebody who escaped my situation, so of course I'm going to see it different than like somebody who's kicked out, didn't want to be kicked out, and probably wasn't even expecting to be kicked out. And then like all the other kids, they were foster kids. They had been homeless their whole life, or since they got kidnapped from their parents and family or whatever. So like they're used to being on the streets, and a lot of them were like on substances. They were all really depressed. A lot of them, they had to take a bunch of psychotropics to try to help with their depression, which definitely weren't helping. The ones that were still able to be enrolled in school and go to school definitely seemed a little bit happier. But yeah, and the point with that I was getting at is, I don't even remember, but I do worry for like these people. But I don't really remember, what was I supposed to be getting at? I don't even, hold up. I guess like the main point is that like for all the people that escape at least, and even some people that get kicked out, or they're like in foster care, or they aged out. But either way, even if you don't age out, you're going to be homeless the whole time of being in foster care, because it is in and of itself being homeless, but you're going to be on the streets a lot of times even before 18. And it's safer on the streets than in CPS custody, as everyone always says. But I personally don't even really consider myself bad, but people will like, most people definitely would consider the situation bad, or they just like say something blamey with it. But overall, my point is that like these rhetorics just aren't helpful. And I even remember like a recent situation earlier, and another one where like I was told the whole you need to say you're doing good. And I remember being told stuff like that so often, especially like at some of the worst points of my Cash for Kids system abuse and just other things, and even at some of my worst points of being out here as well. But I did spend a lot of time in like Cali, and I mean like a lot of people, they get traumatized, and a lot of Caucasian people are like raised Catholic, but there's like mostly like a lot of New Age people. But I mean, I'm not going to hear like a lot of the same religious rhetoric in Cali like at all, obviously, because they hate that stuff that I would hear like in the South when I originally ended up out here, and since being back in the South. But just having people like curse me out and tell me that I'm not being grateful, because for one, they're taking what I said and making it like into an insult to them. And the reason that they do that is because they're not happy themselves. but they don't want to admit that because they don't want to seem ungrateful and blasphemous. And so they want to claim that I said that I was doing bad when that's not what I said. I just said that I don't know. I can't say that I'm doing bad now because there's definitely situations I've been in where I definitely could and sometimes would say I wasn't doing good, and then of course I would get the same little be grateful because God woke you up this morning and you're here and stuff like that. And then it's like, well, I mean, shoot, I didn't say that I wanted to wake up anyways, just like people didn't say that they want to be born. But yeah, so there's that. That's actually like kind of similar, but this Christianity, New Age rhetoric, insults of you can only control yourself, don't say you're not doing well, or don't say you don't know how you're doing, or that things aren't going how you want, because that's being ungrateful and blasphemous pretty much, which even goes back into the toxic positivity issues that I always mention, and how these types of people that tell you don't be negative, be positive, and this toxic positivity bullcrap, what they're really teaching you is complacency. They're telling you to have cognitive dissonance and to accept bad situations of all types, even ones that you could possibly get out of or change. And it actually, that mindset of toxic positivity keeps you in bad situations because you're telling yourself that the situation isn't bad when it is, instead of accepting that it is bad and trying to fix it. I still remember when I started to become really sick in the little 3, maybe even that months of school that I went to near the right before I escaped part of my abuse situation. And I was first called to Debbie Downer by a mandated reporter cash for kid system staff, which was a teacher, I think, something like that. And she would just, I even remember like when she looked at me while I probably looked sleep deprived, my eyes were probably red, my hair was falling out. This was like, well, I had been dropped down 80 pounds by this point. It was just like really bad. And she just looked at me, she was like, have you ever watched that show Debbie Downer or something like that? And I was like, no, never even heard of that. I didn't say that part though. I never have heard of it, to be honest, but she said that I remind her of Debbie Downer, and that was just when I was asking for help and I had to talk to a social worker. So yeah.